Hey family, today's topic is generosity. Why it feels good to give. Generosity. Why it feels good to give. And speaking of this thing called generosity, I'm actually applying it right now as we speak. And the way that I'm applying it is number one, I just realized because I've opened my back door and I'm enjoying a little bit of the fresh air, I have generously invited a couple flies into my space, and they are fortunate right now that I'm on a live stream and that I'm not up chasing them. No, so that was just in the moment. But the other place that I'm applying generosity right now, as the point of this stream, is usually you all know that when we come on for the self-care journey, I usually have music playing in the background. And so right now there is music playing in the background, but it's not my music. I'm being generous right now. So my dad is actually having himself a nice warm bath, and he's enjoying his music. And so rather than to ask him to turn it down in order to do my self-care session, I decided to be generous and allow him to have a good time. And I would do this live stream this way. And this is the point of this topic today. So good afternoon, Delima, Russell, Sheila, and Rodney, Michael Orr. Thank you all so much for hanging out. I hope your day is going well. I'm excited about today's time, so I hope you enjoy this. Generosity, why it feels good to give. 10% happier self-care journey. Today is 3/19/20. And so to continue on with that story, usually if my dad has some music happening and I'm about to do a live stream, I'll politely ask him if he doesn't mind turning it down, and he'll gladly do it, and it's no problem. Now, in order to extend that generosity the other way, I'm not deciding to ask him to turn it down today. And then later on, if he finds out that I was doing a self-care session and he knows what the normal flow would be, then that will probably make him feel like I am generous and kind to him. And then that means the next time I need it, he probably won't mind as normal. It's a giving kind of thing. So it's a small thing, right? But herein lies the crux of what today is about. So let's jump into it. Let's start off with a definition. The quality of being kind, understanding, and not selfish. The quality of being generous. Generosity can bring us a lot of joy, fulfillment, and happiness. But, and this is the part that really gets fun, but it depends on what mindset it's coming from. Now, so let me give a shout out to Sharon Salzberg, who is the author of this particular course that I'm in within a larger course. So the course that I'm in, the larger course is called 10% Happier, an app created by Dan Harris, the news anchor who used to be on ABC. And then within that, there's a bunch of courses by different authors, different really good contributors. I hope to be a contributor myself one day. So the one that I'm in now is called 10% Nicer by Sharon Salzberg. And so she really does a good job with the way that she breaks down some of this stuff. And these are my notes. Oh, speaking of notes, I forgot to do two things. Number one, I forgot to paste the notes to the chat as always. So I am pasting the notes right now for you all to follow along with and save for yourself. And then number two, I actually want to share this video. How do you share this video from here? I want to share this to my public figure page while we are here, but I don't know how to. Okay, so anyway, Sharon Salzberg breaks things down, and this is what the topic is today. So I never heard generosity talked about in the form of mindsets, right? And this is me putting mindsets on what I'm about to describe. I never heard it talked about from a couple different perspectives. To me, generosity was just generosity. It's giving, it's sharing. That could be time, money, some different things that we'll talk about here. It could be presence, But I knew about that. But I never heard about different mindsets with regard to generosity. So check this out. Generosity can bring us a lot of joy, fulfillment, and happiness, but it depends on what mindset is coming from. The three mindsets of generosity, as labeled by Aaron Hill. Number one, unselfishly seeing and sharing with someone, having empathy, compassion, and kindness to share out of the desire to see the person happy and with good well-being. This is non-obligatory and or not overly attached to receiving in return. This is what I'm labeling as you look at the notes. I'm labeling this as beneficial generosity. This is the beneficial form of it. Unselfishly seeing and sharing with someone, having empathy, compassion, and kindness to share out of the desire to see the person happy and with good well-being. This is non-obligatory and not overly attached to receiving in return. That's important because, as we talked about before, attachment is where we really get in trouble. Attachment and expectations. You better make your religion like mine, which is acceptance over expectation. I'm telling you, I really believe it's the true way to peace. I'm actually going to put that on a t-shirt. My religion is expectation. Is acceptance over expectation. Okay, so that's number one. That's the one that we're all familiar with, that kind of unselfish giving. Here's the second mindset of generosity. Giving because we don't feel like we deserve. Giving generously out of self-pity. This is non-beneficial. Never thought about this until they talked about this in the course. Hey, Takora. Hey, Bunky. Thanks for hanging out. Who else is here? Thank you, Delima, Russell. I never thought about generosity in a non-beneficial way. Giving because we feel like we don't deserve. Giving out of self-pity. So on one side, it may seem like, wow, that's really humble. You know, here it is, this person gave, and if you're the receiver, you're like, wow, this is really generous. And you might not realize that this person is giving this to you because they purely feel like they don't deserve. What's up, Cuzzo? Mac, what's up? Brother, thanks for hanging out. Yeah, but that's a negative form of generosity. When you're giving because you feel like you don't deserve, this is not beneficial. Here's the third one that I hadn't thought about. Giving out of obligation or fear. This is non-beneficial as well. And I actually spoke too fast because I'm getting ready to tell you all a short story of how this third one, giving out of obligation and fear, is something that I thought about, and I thought about pretty deeply over the past several years, especially when I started going deeper as far as philosophy and spirituality and thought in life. So I'm going to say in advance, short story long, when I was Christian and I was participating in the concept of tithing, as I studied it to the core to look at why I believe what I believe, I came to some of the most important things that, you know, many people, I would say not too many people think about. Maybe in some degree, but not always. I looked at, where did this thing fall? Did it fall in the place of obligation? Did it fall in the place of pure generosity? Did it fall in the place of giving because I didn't feel like I deserved? So when I looked at the obligatory aspect of it, which most people that do follow this practice accept the obligatory aspect of it for what they perceive as the benefits. And that's understandable. We do that all the time in life. But I started thinking about things and saying, wait a minute, if I am obligated to tithe, even if it's by a God, then how does that actually activate true generosity? Generosity like number one here, which is unselfishly giving out of not just the kindness of your heart, you know, but with, I mean, that's the meat, that's the crux of it. But also without, what do we call it? Without being influenced or under duress. That's the word I'm looking for. Without being under duress. I started realizing that although when you accept what you feel are the benefits of doing this thing, then it doesn't seem like the obligatory aspect of it is detrimental. But when I started to think about, like, wait a minute, if the whole purpose of this is true giving without influence and without a reward or punishment being dangled over your head, it's supposed to be out of pure generosity, then the obligation aspect of it is actually a negative in the equation. It was one of the biggest things that made me start questioning a lot of things. So here's what I did. In lieu of that, what I wound up doing was I started monitoring my giving and my tithing, and I started making sure that the only way I allowed myself to give was I had to be coming from number one here. I had to be coming from an unselfish place out of the kindness of my heart that I wanted to give. I couldn't feel like I was going to feel a sense of lack from this, because then I wasn't activating the point. Now, when I studied this course today, they actually said something to the contrary, which is like, if you're feeling like, feelings of fear or lack, then give. They use that as a practice, and that is good. I feel like both are good, because that's how you push yourself past it to learn, to give yourself the ability to learn the point and not be hindered by your fears. But in my effort of like trying to come from the purest place that I thought would be the ultimate point, whether it was in a scripture or not, I was like, I shouldn't give if I actually feel like I'm feeling a sense of lack, because that's not the point. I need to be able to give and feel like I'm still all right. And then number two, and this is the big challenge for everybody out there that subscribes to this belief, I was like, I also should not give out of the place of feeling like this is an obligation, even if it's from a scripture or from something that I'm supposed to uphold, because again, that's not the purity of giving. That's not me giving because I actually care sympathetically and deeply. It's because I don't want to get my ass kicked. Or on the opposite side, it's because I want to receive a great reward or appease, a daddy and that kind of thing. And I started realizing, like, I know that we all believe this, but that doesn't make sense. And here we are now. It was constantly confirmed over the years, and then this kind of lesson really, continues on. So the deal is, it's like, that's what I challenge. I'll say that, like, more so than like the idea, and this is not to go off on a tangent, but I told you I was short story long. Not to go off on a tangent, but this isn't about trying to get people to not, believe in their beliefs and that kind of thing. It's not that. What my challenge would be ultimately, if anything, and then I'll move on, is try to, if you're going to give, I challenge you to do it from that perspective and to drop the idea that it's an obligation, even if that's really what you believe, because the true aspect of generosity doesn't come from being forced to give because you're given choices of rewards and punishments if you do or don't. That's not where true generosity comes from. And it's a contradiction if you believe what you believe. So that's my challenge, really. Give from that place. And we're going to dive more into that, but not dealing with money and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and drop me your thoughts. Let me know what y'all think about what I just said, because I know I just said a mouthful. So the three mindsets of generosity. There's one that's beneficial, which is the unselfish aspect. And there's one that's beneficial, and there's two that's not beneficial. Generosity out of feeling like you're doing it because you don't deserve, and I could jump right back into that religious pie with that. Giving because you feel like you don't deserve, that's not beneficial. And then the third one is giving out of obligation or fear. And let's stay with obligation, so that way we can really make the point, be driven home. That is not beneficial. Of these three mindsets, it is important to monitor and be honest with oneself about the source of the generosity when being generous, to make sure that it's coming from a healthy as opposed to unhealthy place, right? That's the way of like pulling it all together. You got to be able to be honest with yourself, and that's my deal. And I'm sorry this is itching me like this, but that's my deal, because for a lot of people, it's hard for us to be honest with ourselves when we feel like there's hell to pay for just these feelings, or for like not just following suit, and just, Anyway, so generosity can come in the form of giving time, money, attention, and even extending feelings of loving kindness, patience, empathy, presence, and even making space for another's feelings, preferences, and opinions. So Delima says, thanks, Aaron, for the insight. I just had this conversation. That's amazing. And I love to hear more about that. Takora says, yes, I'm a tither. I totally dig it. And I'm wondering what you think about, what I just said about that challenge. Hey, Marion, thanks for the love. Hey, Kara, thank y'all for hanging out. So, one of the things that's, I would say, the most accessible forms of generosity is giving of loving kindness, patience, empathy, and presence, and making space for another person's feelings, preferences, and opinions. Because it doesn't cost anything, like both literally and figuratively. I mean, yes, it is time. Yes, it is attention. But, for many of us, we have that. And here's my deal with why it's easy for me a lot of times to give that. It's a real simple principle. It's the principle that I need that same shit in return. It's the principle of and we're going to talk about it in a few minutes, when it comes to acceptance, and that kind of giving of accepting of another person. In order for you all to deal with me, even to just listen to the sound of my voice right now, you have to accept me to some degree. You have to be being generous to me to some degree. Even if it's just I value what he's saying, and I see him just like anybody else trying to put one foot in front of the other and trying to just make the world a better place or do positive things. That's generosity that you're giving me. Because I know I need it in order to be, coexisting and have some relationships and friendships and that kind of thing. And coexist. It's like I have to give it as well. So it's really no thought for me to give it, because I value how it's being given to me on a daily basis. But these are the different forms that generosity can come in. Some other practices of giving generosity include thanking people more, smiling, making people feel seen, heard, or like their feelings matter, and even something simple like giving a person your undivided attention when they are sharing. This cannot be overstated. I think about this a lot, and I've been trying to do it more and more. Just pausing, looking a person in their eyes, and giving them your undivided attention when they're sharing is huge generosity. So, one deep application of this right now is, we all have smartphones. So now it's kind of common when you're in conversation to still be on your phone and be paying attention, and the person might not take it as disrespect. But you may be paying attention and still, doing something on your phone or preoccupied. What I found is that because that's the case and because it is acceptable, it makes the action of stopping, putting your phone down, looking a person in their eyes, showing them that they have your undivided attention, it now makes that pop even more. So now we're moving into the place of ethics, and relationship, where that is even more significant because it's understood that you can listen to a person and, be on your phone. So, yeah, can't overstate that. Let's see. Delima says, thanks for the insight. I personally don't like the feeling of being made to do something out of fear or obligation due to old beliefs. Totally feel you on that, Delima. And that's my challenge here because, like I said, even if I accept people's beliefs, because I know, especially because a lot of the beliefs have been my own over the years, even if I don't subscribe to them now. But I do realize that there are some things that are hindrances in those beliefs that we don't even realize are impacting us because we're focusing on the pros, So I agree with you there, and that's why I even pointed out the way that I do. So here's another fun one right here. Practice gentleness with yourself and reflection as opposed to guilt during times when you don't feel generous. That's a fun one because, guilt when you don't feel generous can come from a couple different places. One place it can come from is pure sincerity. Like, I really do want to give and I feel guilty that I can't. Another place might be that, I don't want to give, but I feel pressured, too. Hey, Cuzzo, Michelle, thanks for hanging out. So that guilt sometimes can come from a place of actually wanting positivity and wanting to give. And so it's important to be gentle with yourself and reflect, because it just means that you could deal with it better. Guilt can be such a toxic thought, you know. Excuse me. Guilt can be a toxic thought, when you're dealing with something like generosity and really dealing with anything. So be gentle with yourself, especially if you feel like you were feeling guilty for some negative, fearful reason. Like, it doesn't hurt to beat yourself up. Just take it easy, Look at your intentions. I say that over anything, and I want to say that to everybody here as like a reaffirming kind of thing. If you don't trust anyone else, trust yourself when you have good intentions. If you don't trust anybody else, or if you can't trust anybody else, there's some situations where you might not go into or you might not engage with because you feel like you can't trust other people. Or you might be afraid it's going to not go a good way. Trust yourself. If you know your intentions and if your intentions are good, a lot of times you need to let that be your driving force, because a lot of times that will work things out. That will really work things out. And even if they don't go as planned, if your intentions are out front, loud and clear, that can't be denied. That's your honest truth. And people will see that, and that works in your favor. This is why, on a completely different side note, why I enjoy this kind of expression more and more every day. And I enjoy being vulnerable more and more every day, because it's actually empowering to be vulnerable in front of everybody. Because then you don't have to worry about people judging you. They know you. You can just be yourself, Now, the hurdle is the part that I try to help other people, over as well. That hurdle of like that first stage when, you're being yourself and you face that place of judgment from people. It could be scary, when you put all your feelings out there or your, that kind of thing. But honestly, it's empowering because everybody goes through stuff, right? And everybody has their own shit. So to be honest, what winds up happening is you quickly become a person who's seen in a positive way because people are like, wow. And I get it every day now. I'm so appreciative of it. It's so affirming. People are like, wow. In the midst of us all having our shit, like, you are going forward. You're not afraid, as someone told me the other day. Like, you're not afraid to just be yourself and just put it out there. And I'm like, yeah, this is the reason why. Because exactly what you're saying to me right now and what's happened to you, which is that you're telling me in her own words, she was like, you inspire me so much, and I realized it's just because, yeah, I'm not afraid to be myself and I'm gentle with myself. So, anywho, here we go. Next point. We got 2 more points and then we're getting out of here. Thank y'all so much for hanging with me. And I'm very curious, more than hearing my own thoughts, I'm very curious of what you think as well from all this, whether you agree, disagree, what you take from this, or what your thoughts are. So now we come to practice extending generosity with difficult as well as easygoing people to really build your resilience and your giving capacity, without being taken advantage of course. Remember, you're not condoning negativity or detrimental behavior, etc. You're activating change by setting an example and not stooping to such low levels. And if y'all hear me pausing at times, I get emotional around this stuff. Like, as a kid, like, I would cry over the most sincere things. And even though I wrote this, when I read it back, like, it kind of brings tears to me. Like, this is what it's all about. And you have to practice extending generosity with difficult as well as easygoing people. You don't want to be taken advantage of, but you got to remember that this actually is strength. That's why never mistake your generosity or your humility or another person's as weakness. It's not. It's actually strength. Because when you're being generous with a difficult person, you're not condoning their actions. You're not being a pushover. You're not being passive. And don't let anybody make you feel that way, because that would make you go back on something that's a really positive trait to be operating in. You're just being a bigger person. You're just recognizing that this person they're struggling just like you are. You're being a bigger person. There was an analogy that that I thought of a while ago when I was studying Course in Miracles. I don't know if you all ever heard that, but I used to be a Course in Miracles teacher. I used to love that course so much, and I still do. But I remember somewhere in the learning process when they gave a metaphor, I remember coming up with a metaphor in my mind, and this was talking about like coming to that place of equanimity and peace where you could actually help other people because you made room and that kind of thing for them. And I remember thinking about, like, if there's a person in a pool and that person is struggling as far as swimming and that person is maybe drowning, in order for another person to save them, when they jump in the water, they have to remain calm even though the person is flapping around their arms and going crazy. They might even be smacking them in the face and everything. The lifeguard, and even if it's not a lifeguard, the life-saving person has to remain calm. Because if they're just as wild, if they're wilding out just as much as the person who needs help, then they're both going to float. I mean, they're both going to sink. I mean, and yeah, then they're both going to need somebody to save them. So the only way to save the person is in the midst of all this arms flailing around and all this kind of stuff, remaining calm. This is what generosity is, So, and if the person was like wilding out so much they were smacking you in the face and starting to bring you down in the water, you might have to yell at the person and say, "Hold the hell up, man. Like, chill out, gal." Like, I need you to stop smacking me in the face so I can save you. And that might be what the person needs just to reel them in. But ultimately, you're still not going all the way down to that level of franticness, of total fear, of total just chaos. This is what practicing generosity and all these other things that we talk about on a daily basis in this journey, this is what it's about. You're being the bigger person and you're exhibiting strength, not weakness. You're setting an example and not stooping to such low levels. And last but not least, this is the final point of the day. Remember that two of the simplest but most impactful and effective ways to apply generosity is to let someone be who they are as long as they are not harming you or anyone else, and to be present with someone during a tough time. You may not be able to take away their pain or suffering, but your presence will make them feel like they are not alone, which is invaluable and irreplaceable. That's what we end for today. Those 2 points those are the simplest things you can do. And like my friend Joe Brown said, if you get a chance to watch this, Joe, drop a comment from what you were saying in our other conversation. It's not easy, it's simple, but it's not easy. But it becomes easy when you realize all the other things that we talked about today, where it works in your best benefit. You're possibly teaching someone, sometimes when people act out, it's because they're so used to other people acting out in the same way, like responding to them in that way, that they think that they have to be that way in order to get what they want. It's just like teaching a baby. All we are as adults are grown-ass babies. When you want to teach a baby that they don't have to cry or act out in order to receive what they desire, you don't act out with them. What you do is when they're sitting there trying to get your attention, doing all that, you sit there and you don't give them what they want, but you sit there looking at them like they're crazy and showing them like this is not going to work. And then eventually they realize like, okay, I'm getting tired of doing this and not working. And then what you do is you reward them when they give you better behavior. So if they stop in that moment and they ask nicely, then you say yes. And even as I'm talking this through, I'm teaching myself more as a parent on, like, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. And you're not teaching them that they rule you. What you're teaching them is that in order for them to get what they want, a different response is required. You're teaching them that they don't have to act out in order to get love. And this is the same thing that we do as adults. Some people automatically get defensive with you because they haven't been heard before. Nobody ever took the time to just say, what are your thoughts and your feelings? And I'm not going to interrupt until you, I'm not going to talk until you finish. And even when I do, I'm not going to just straight dismiss your feelings right off the bat. I'm going to say, oh, so I see this is how you feel. I'm going to mirror, which is something that I'm grateful for, that I've been taught in these last couple years with someone who had to deal with my shit, as I had to learn how, oh, this is what they're saying. This is what they're hearing. This is what it's like on the other side. That's why it's easy to give, but many people haven't been told, or asked, what are your feelings? How would you do things? How would you do this? How does this make you feel? So sometimes when you're seeing a person be defensive right off the bat, it's because they're used to having to defend themselves. When you show them that they don't have to defend themselves, then they in many cases they naturally change. This is one of my deepest philosophies about life. The way to make a change or to have a mind change, whether it's your mind or someone else's, you got to keep having the contrasting experience. That's like, in many ways, that's all you have to do is keep having a contrasting experience. You don't have to be punished. You don't have to be none of these things. You just have to have the contrasting experience, because a lot of our actions are old reactions. And so a lot of times we are flowing based off of old habits. So it's something that's programmed here at this point because of neural pathways, not even something that we're intentionally doing. So you can reverse that by giving someone a contrasting experience. Now, it will still show up. Hey, Eunice. Hey, Marianne. Hey, Michelle. Thank y'all for hanging out. It may still show up initially. So case in point, you may extend someone gratitude and generosity, but they come at you defensive, right? You may have to take that first. You may have to just be a cushion. That's why all this other stuff is so important. KF Powell, thanks for hanging out. That's why all this other stuff is so important. You may have to be a cushion for a second, right? Not being a pushover. You still put them in place. It's like the restraint versus beating somebody's ass. Like, the restraint is like, hey, you're not going to just sit here and treat me some kind of way, and I'm going to protect myself. But I'm also trying to be mindful that you're dealing with some stuff too. So you got to be able to be that. But if you continue to, then a lot of times what you'll see is that the person won't be defensive anymore with you when they come off, because they realize they don't have to go that way in order to be heard. They can just trust that when they share their feelings in a kind way, that people will listen, or some people will listen at least. Thank you. Eunice says you are so on point. Thank you, Eunice. I swear I could talk about this for an hour, and that's why I'm even allowing myself to go on even a little bit longer, because it really is the point I've learned. If you treat, if you give a person an opposing experience than what they've been used to, a lot of their bad habits will naturally fade. And that's why it's important to build yourself up with all of this stuff: equanimity, compassion, all this generosity, mudita, compersion, all these good things. Because that's how you really change the world. That's how you really change people. You just don't give them the shit that they are used to. That's all. In many, many ways. And then they realize, oh, so I don't have to fight for what I want. I don't have to be so negative. I don't have to be so uptight or not trusting or defensive. And then you were able to benefit from that by helping someone while maintaining, mindfulness and equanimity while it was happening. So there's two ways to be on this roller coaster called life, and here's where I'll end. And we'll take a couple deep breaths and get out of here. There's two ways to be on this roller coaster called life. You either enjoy, throw your hands up, like how you do on a roller coaster, and scream at the thrill, hold your breath when you're going down the big hill. That's how I learned how to keep your stomach from dropping. Hold your breath and squeeze, But you either are on a roller coaster of life where you make it a good journey, or you let the hills and the twists and turns keep you down and scared and fearful. It's your choice a lot of times. And I say a lot of times because I'm always mindful of the people whose choices are completely taken away from them. And so on that note, that is the end of our session, or at least coming to the close of our session today. One thing I will do, so I've been generous to my dad. For those that have jumped on late stream, take it back to the top, and what I'm about to say right now, I want you to hear the context of it. So I've been generous enough to my dad. My dad, he's enjoyed his music, and I want to play a little something on the way out, just for this meditation portion. So today's session was on generosity and why it feels so good to give. One other thing I forgot to include in here, which is a quote of mine, is that, if you're a giver, if you're truly a giver, then the way that you receive your gift is by other people receiving the gift that you give. So that's what it really is for me. And that's why it's easy for me to give, and why it always feels good to me to give. Why does it feel good to you to give? So whatever that is, drop a line, let me know. I'm really curious of how you experience that. And on that tip, we're going to get on out of here. We're going to just take 3 deep breaths and do something that I call the 30-second meditation technique. It's just 3 deep breaths and 10 seconds of mindfulness. Just present, just being with the moment, being with yourself, being in a non-judgmental place, a mindful place. So you can settle in. If it works for you, you can close your eyes. If you're somewhere where that's not the case, then you can totally do this with your eyes open. You can do this while you're driving. It's just mindfulness. It's just the intention of taking the 30 seconds out to do this that counts. So we're just going to take it 30 seconds to do something that's so vital, so important, and so often overlooked, which is just take a deep breath. And as we do this, we're going to just take in what we've talked about today with generosity and all the good feelings that go along with that. So let's take a deep breath in through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Take another deep breath in and out. And when we take this last breath, try to allow for your belly to expand on the inhale as much as possible, and to deflate on the exhale. So let's take a deep breath in and out. And let's just take 10 more seconds before we re-enter the stream of life, the stream of Facebook, the stream of consciousness, the stream of everything else, all the to-dos, all the responsibilities, all the things we're excited about, and the things even that we're worried about. Let's just take 10 more seconds to just be in that space of just silence, in that space of breathing, in the space of detachment from all of the above. take one more final deep breath in and out. As we return to this thing that we call life, which includes that moment and more moments like that. The goal is to not just practice these kind of moments when we're stressed, but to really practice them when we're not stressed. So that way, when we feel stressed or when we feel anxious, these kind of practices will just take over and we'll stay in that place of peace. So I thank you all so much for hanging out today. This was really fun. I know it was kind of long. I know I went to a few rants, but honestly, I really feel like, everything that we talked about today was really, really just significant, really needed, really just important, period, in life, and not just, these times. So Rika D, thanks for hanging out. How are you? How the family? How the kiddos? So everybody, thank you so much for hanging out. Generosity, why it feels good to give. Take it from the top if you jumped in halfway through. Really curious your thoughts. And if you'd like to help me make more content like this, look out for that info in the comments and description. And this music that I played, the rest of the music was by my DJ dad today, as he enjoyed himself with his music and as I gave him generosity. And so this tune that you're hearing in the background now is called Breath of Life. It's a meditation that I wrote for a guided meditation called Breathe Deeply that is on YouTube if you get a chance to check it out on my channel. I also dropped a video yesterday that's called What in the World is Aaron Hill TV Really About? If you get a chance, look at that video on my timeline or on my YouTube channel, Aaron Hill TV. I feel like it's the best descriptive overview that I've given for my life and giving for who I am and what this whole journey is about. Why do I show up every day? And what the hell am I talking about? Because I know I'm not the only thing happening on social media, but there's a lot of people that appreciate what I do, and I appreciate you. And there's a lot of people that don't know what I'm trying to give on a daily basis. So check that out. And as always, peace and be well. And join me in about 5 minutes for the word of the day. Take care.